actually the content marketer over at PayScale right now. But super experienced in leading content marketing for a lot of different startup companies in Seattle. And she's going to share some of those real-life examples and some tips and advice with you all today. So let's make sure we welcome her to class.
Thank you. Hi, it's really good to be here. So I hope that I can give you guys some really actionable tips and frameworks and examples to kind of inspire you to do your own marketing plans for this class. So a couple of things I want to talk about today on the agenda. The first piece is just kind of what is the role of content marketing within a business, my process for creating effective content, how to create content, promote it, and then how do you do all of that when you are very resource constrained if you are a startup. And then I'll kind of share a really cool framework I learned about to be more effective at telling stories within the realm of marketing, especially if you're selling a B2B product, if it is, a product for technical users that may not be where it's not super easy to talk about it. How can you use content marketing to essentially make sure the world knows about you and create like a new space in people's minds about your company? And then I'll kind of talk about some things I think that have been key to my own profession and like how you can be successful if you want to think about this as a career path. I'm kind of an accidental marketer. That isn't what I thought I would be doing when I was sitting in your chairs. I guess 5-6 years ago. I actually studied economics, but my school, we had a minor in entrepreneurial leadership, and I thought marketing was my favorite class because, you can tell stories, you can think about ways to be creative, and you can accomplish results, right? Like people actually buy your product. So that was really interesting to me. So kind of with my background, I thought, it'd be interesting to go into the field of consumer insights research. Others might call this market research. There are agencies that help big brands, you may all know, to understand their customers, what their customers are thinking, saying, what's their sentiment, and then use this kind of information to inform their marketing strategies or how they want to promote products or how they want to think about launching new products. So that's where I started in my career, was in this consulting role, but I then thought it would be more interesting and impactful, personally more fulfilling if I could go into a company and kind of make a more tangible difference and be more involved in like the strategy and the execution and kind of see how my work may impact the business. So I thought a good way to do that would be to actually learn digital marketing. And for me, I actually took a couple of classes. One was through General Assembly, which is something that you can take classes online or in Seattle. And then I also did a full-time boot camp for people who want to work at startups. I've spent kind of the last 4 years in different marketing roles here at tech companies, mostly on the B2B side. I spent a couple years at Tableau, which is a big business intelligence company that helps you, understand and visualize your data. And then my startup experience, like where I got the most of it, was from Sacito. I just left there about a couple months ago. And this is another software product for marketing professionals to use. And it helps marketing people actually find more prospects or more sales opportunities through what people are tweeting about online. And then most recently, I'm at PayScale, which is very interesting. They both target consumers, so individuals, people who are looking for jobs or are curious about, what salary might be for a certain position, as well as businesses that need to figure out how to pay people and price their jobs. So we have two sides of the business. I'm just kind of giving you an overview because like a lot of what I'm going to say might be a little bit more relevant to B2B businesses, but I'll try to also, show you some consumer examples So the way I think about content marketing is you're really telling stories, you're creating these assets and getting them out to your target audiences and influencers so that people can, know about your brand, that when they think about your brand, they associate it with certain traits, certain characteristics, they know they're interested in you, they kind of start to have this sort of emotional connection with you, right? That's kind of the beginning of when you launch a startup, you want to define and figure out what do you want people to think about your brand. And I think it's a really cool opportunity in the marketing realm to be a content marketer, because I think it's a really core, you're like a really core person in the business, because if you want to do an effective job at driving the business forward, you have to, and create content, you have to know exactly whom your business is targeting. Who is your target audience? What do they care about? How does your product fit their need? And then you also kind of are like essentially driving, you're trying to help your company change people's perception about you, and you can actually even measure your effort and tie it back to revenue and sales. So it could be a really high impact role, and that's why I like it. So how do you come up with ideas and then create the content and then promote it? There's really 8 steps to the process. And a few of these steps, you can do them at once. So the first and most important step, I think, with content is you want to start with why. And this is not why am I creating this piece of content, but just remembering why does your business exist, right? Like what purpose in the world is it serving, right? It's not about your product. It's not about what your company actually does. It's about why does it matter, right? So to give you an example with PayScale, right? Like our mission, like yes, we sell, salary information and software, but our mission is to help people and businesses have better, more open, honest, two-way communications about compensation and about, their people's jobs in general, so that both the individuals and the companies are both better off, right? We're trying to create better workplaces where people are happier, they're paid more fairly. So that's kind of like the why piece, right? You always kind of want to start there. And then the second thing, right, you guys have some knowledge of this already, is you want to start with your target audience. Who are you really going after? What do they care about? How do they consume information, go about shop for solutions, know that piece. And then the next step would be to set specific goals for, the content you want and you need. And then, you want to be doing the research to figure out how you want to approach this topic or this piece of content, what sort of format might be most effective for your audience. Another really important thing in the content marketing role is promoting your stuff, right? You want to spend as much time promoting your stuff as you are creating it, because it's really, really noisy, and you guys know, right? We have so many different ways to consume information, all types of media, social media. There's just everything is trying to grab your target audience attention, so you have to be really, really smart about how you promote it. And then lastly, and this is really important too, is since you've set the goals already, well, how are you achieving your goals? How are you performing? What's working, what's not working? And so then you can figure that out and take those learnings and then make your next campaign, your next set of content marketing effort better. A really good resource, to put together and to have as a reference when you're creating any kind of content is you can create a buyer journey or a buyer persona, right? So you want to know, like, who are the types of people you are serving? What do they care about? How do they do research, right? Like, where are they getting their information from? Who are the people or publications or social networks or maybe it's actual events they would care about, they would pay attention to. And generally, right, also in the B2B side, right, when you're selling software, for example, to businesses, it's not just one buyer who is making the decision. It's going to be a group of people who are influencing the purchasing decision. So you're going to have to know what each of those people care about. So to give you a quick example, if you're selling compensation software, which is what PayScale does, you have the user of the product who is an HR manager who is trying to be in the software, figuring out how to price jobs, how to pay people. But then there is also the CFO or the CEO who has to be the one to approve the budget, right, and make sure that there is a business case there for the software. And then you might also have managers who have to work with HR people and figure out what's the right amount of, let's say, annual increases to give to the employees. So when you're thinking about your business and your marketing plan, it's important that you think about not just the user of your product, but also who else is influencing the decision and what do they care about. I think that there's already a lot of content marketing effort out there in the world, and brands, a lot of them are probably doing more, are creating more content than is necessary or best serving them right now. And this is something I think is really key is before you create, and there might be a lot of good ideas you have, right? Like there's so many ways to reach your audience, so many things that might be cool. You can do videos, you can do interactive data visualizations, you could create interactive game, of course, you can do blog posts. There's so many types of things you can do, but before you do anything, you want to know what's the point, right? What are you trying to do? And how do you measure that success? So the kind of funnel or customer journey, the way I think about it is there are really a few stages, right, for the marketing for how people are going to learn more and more about you until they reach a decision or buy something. There's the brand awareness stage where you're trying to just make sure that they know about you and they're coming to your website or they're coming to whatever is a core hub for your brand, right? And when you're just trying to drive brand awareness, right, you're gonna just look at metrics like traffic or social media follower growth, right? Or how much share of voice is out there about you, or how are people sharing your content and discovering it on third-party sites. Versus if you're trying to acquire customers, or if you're trying to get people to give you their contact information, you should be tracking other things like how many email addresses you're collecting. If you're trying to move people even further down the sales funnel, or make sure that, like, if they're already interested in you, but you want to make sure they learn more about your product, then there's a whole other set of tactics you should be using and metrics you should be using, and so those are just some of the kind of sample metrics. But like when I was at Sacido, right, before we do anything major, such as create a new report or a series of webinars, right, we actually try to figure out, we kind of create a plan and figure out, like, okay, who is this for? What stage of the buying journey is that person in right now? And then what's the primary metric we will be looking at in order to see if this is successful? And so a few sort of questions, right, I would ask myself or my team when we're thinking about what type of content or what sort of thing should we be working on. We always go back to these questions. It's about the person or the audience you're serving. It's not about what is interesting to you necessarily. It's like, what do they really care about? What are they struggling with that is not directly related to your product, but what are they dealing with in their space? So I think here, the other thing I kind of think about is, well, I really like research, right? So there's actually a lot of tools that will tell you like what, if you're looking at a topic space or thinking about topic, like a tool called BuzzSumo, it'll tell you what are the most popular or most shared articles on that topic written by anyone, right? Based on search results, based on social sharing. So then you can go take a look at those articles and see like, and try to figure out what made them really popular. Is it specific information? Is it specific pain points they're talking about? Is it that they're more thorough? Is it that they all have more than 2,000 words, for example? And just kind of, you can get a lot of it from these tools that kind of do competitive analysis on the web, right? And then that will give you like a good idea of like, okay, in a general topic, what specific things are undercovered, right? And those are areas where if you have a good perspective, you can then become the authoritative expert on that topic. Let's see, other things, right, is people are searching for specific keywords and queries, right, when they have a problem. You want to try to figure out what are those keywords related to your space that people would be searching for. And there's lots of tools that can help you do that as well. And you want to be targeting topics where there's enough volume of searches, right? And so that way there's enough people who are going to be finding your content. And you also want to make sure that you know, the keywords you're targeting isn't extremely competitive. And because if it is extremely competitive, like if the biggest site, most well-known brands are already targeting those keywords, it's just going to take you a long time as a startup to generate enough content, enough traction to be competing with them. And then I really like to just look at industry publications, for example, like when I was, so PageScale is in the HR space, right? We talk about things that HR care about. Well, there are publications and professional associations that you know, serve those HR audiences. So I'm always looking at their websites and trying to figure out what are the topics or issues that are emerging right now, or what's getting a lot of traction. Are there topics where people are already debating those things? So what's coming out from, you know, the business section of the New York Times about wages or compensation or bonuses or tax laws that could be interesting to my audience? And so the way I think about picking ideas for new content pieces or campaigns is I think about fit, demand and supply, and then timing. So those three pieces, what it means is, number one is, could your company talk about that topic credibly? Like, do you have a unique perspective on that topic? Do you have a solution to solve that problem? Maybe, do you have like maybe proprietary data, or can you do original research to back up what you're saying, right? So that people will actually believe you and listen when you talk about it. Kind of other thing I think about, like I said, is, are a lot of other brands already talking about it? If they are, then fine, but can you find a different angle? Can you talk about something they're not already talking about? And then the other kind of thing is like, is this something that's timely right now? If I talked about the Super Bowl on February 2nd and somehow related it to my product, it's going to be timely. But if I talked about the Super Bowl like on February 15th, it's no longer timely, right? And then other kind of things is like, you know, people really like practical, useful tips, right? They kind of want to know exactly step by step how to do things, and so those can be really good as well. So I wanted to find out what type of content do people really want. So I decided to go into my Google Analytics, my content analytics system, to find out what the commonalities of articles we've written that get the most views and most time on site, right? So those are the engagement metrics I care about. And basically, it really boiled down to 8 types of content. So guides are always really popular. If you can give people like specific, actionable, how-to, practical advice, like how to learn to swim in the next 3 days, let me show you how I did it step by step, the more useful, the better it is. And something I found, at least, is a lot of the popular ones are just lists 5 creative ideas to ask someone out, right? These kind of articles and pieces are good because you can quickly cover a bunch of ideas in like in one package, right? And then the other kind of thing is in the professional realm, in B2B especially, people are always really curious and interested in what their peers are doing, right? If I'm Apple, what is Microsoft doing in regard to their compensation practices, or like which, sometimes there's this herd mentality going on, but they also kind of want to know, like, how do I compare to others in my space, right? They're looking for benchmarks, they're looking for data. They want to know, like, for example, if I'm a CMO and I have a budget of, let's say $1 million a year, and I can spend it between, let's say, paid ads, digital display ads, paid social, content marketing. How should I be, how should I be setting my budget and spreading my money across these buckets, right? It's really useful if I were to be able to know what other CMOs in my industry are how they're generally spending their money. Cheat sheets, templates, and checklists, right? This is like to give people a really quick, manageable way to complete a process. So the other kind of thing, this depends, right? But if, let's say, like your audience is generally looking for certain tools to help them do their job better, right? Like everybody is busy, everybody can want to be more productive, more successful. So can you be offering a review of the best time management tools or the best editorial calendar tools, or whatever it is to help them? And then my favorite, and I did a lot of this at Sacido, were just case studies, right? Whenever we tried a new marketing tactic or like a new thing or a campaign that worked, or even if it didn't work, we would kind of explain to people why we did it, how it worked, what the results are, what the key learnings are. And it's kind of another way of creating how-to content. You can do case studies from your own marketing team, or you can invite customers to share like their best practices on how to do something. Or you can invite industry influencers or let's say top marketers to be sharing like what they're doing in regard to XYZ. And then like I said, timely content, newsworthy content, those things work really well. And then the last one are these kind of inspirational ideas, like thought leadership type of content from people in the industry. Like for example, one idea I have for PayScale is, since we serve HR people, and it's also a variety of audience. There's many people who are earlier in their career, and then there are some people who are like VPs of HR and even chief human resources officers. So it'd be interesting to get like the VPs and the chief human resource officers to like blog and talk about how they've been able to make progress and advances in their career, because that would be interesting to others. Okay, I'm going to show you guys a few examples. Okay, so HubSpot, the company, they sell marketing automation software and CRM software to B2B businesses. A really simple problem they're able to solve that applies to all businesses really is, all businesses want to know how good is my website? Is it fast enough? Is it up to standards? Is it doing a good job in getting people to my website, right? So you can just quickly, type in your website and then type in your email address. So, it's giving you useful information about your website in terms of what you care about. So this is just purely useful stuff, and you just know that it's HubSpot, right? It's a really simple way for them to kind of introduce their brand to somebody who isn't ready to buy just yet. People are going to need multiple pieces of content and multiple touch points with your brand before they would even trust you or consider buying from you or talking to a salesperson. So you think about like the whole journey, and you know that you need, there's research done on how many touch points it takes for somebody to get to sales, and it's like more than 5 usually. So you kind of just set your goal is just to, for example, with this kind of tool, right, you can track success in terms of, well, how many emails, net new emails did I get with this? Yeah, I think another good example is the Theo Chocolate Factory in Fremont tour. They sell chocolate, right? But then they offer this tour, and the tour is and you do the tour because you're like, oh, I can taste their chocolate and I can learn about how chocolate is made, right? So they're giving you this like valuable or interesting information, and they're also putting their products in there as well. So I think that's another good example. This is the pay scale salary negotiation guide. This was created for people. Okay, I should back up and say, so what pay scale wants from individuals is for you or the person to take a little survey and give pay scale some information about your current job, like what kind of education level you have and skill set you have and your current salary, and then they can give you back like how your salary compares to others, right, who are doing this kind of job with a similar level of experience. But they know that, if they just come out and ask people to fill out the salary survey, they're not going to do it, because why should I do it, right? They're trying to also help people and build trust. And, who's the person who's going to maybe want to fill out a salary profile survey and get this data? It's people who may have a job offer, right? Or people who are interviewing for jobs right now, and they're thinking about the topic of how do I negotiate my offer and get what I want. So knowing that's the need of the person we're serving here, we created this salary negotiation guide, and it's just to help people get to a successful state, whether you're doing it for the first time, or what you might want certain benefits, or you want to figure out how to ask for a raise or evaluate a new job offer. And so we found, based on analytics, that when people read salary negotiation advice articles, they are actually much more likely to then start a survey and give us their information. So we've kind of pulled all of these articles into one really easy to navigate kind of resource. For those of you who are in college, for example, you can explore different careers. Let's see. So we give you some information on like if you're doing this job today, what could you do in 5 years based on all this aggregated information we have from everybody, right? So people who are like you today, what did they do in the future? Once you have developed the content, how do you get the word out on a budget when you don't have in a startup setting? So a couple of things to think about. One is partnerships, right? There are companies in your space or in adjacent spaces that already have a bigger audience than you. how do you partner with them and get your stuff in front of their audiences? So that's something I did a lot of at Sasito. For example, we partnered with HubSpot. So HubSpot, they have a really, really popular blog with millions of visitors per month, whereas our blog got like 30,000 visitors per month. So, just guest blogging on their blog, suddenly gave us access to a whole new audience. We did a lot of guest blogging, and the way to do that is kind of research like who are companies that not sell the same product, but who are companies that also serve your target audience, and like who are companies that are also culturally similar to you. And then I just reached out to their content marketing teams a lot of times, or whoever I could find that seemed like the right contact, and try to, tell them what we would write about that would be, valuable for their audience. So that's kind of how guest blogging can help you a lot, because when you do that, you can have links back to your website, and you can drive traffic to your website. And that helps you with search engine optimization, getting better ranking as well. Another thing that's really easy to do is just partner with influencers in your space. I don't mean celebrities or famous people, but people who have valuable things to say to your audience, can teach them lessons. You can interview them, you can write about it, or you can do it in many different formats. So yeah.
All right. The very last